Okay, thank you very much. We have our final keynote of the day. And Ron, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce Dennis again, because you'll do a much better job than I will.
I don't know about that, but we've introduced Dennis, but I think one of the things we're excited to hear about, Dennis, is just you've done a lot of work on measuring flourishing at a global level, and one of the beautiful fruits that have come out of this collaboration the last year, we invited Dennis to be part of the quantitative working group to bring his experience as an economist, and that's led to a collaboration between the Harvard project and the Oxford side, the Institute for New Economic Thinking and the Said Business School. And both sides are really excited about bringing together individual flourishing data with the social and environmental and economic data into a larger picture. But I've just been learned a lot from you, Dennis, in this last year, and excited to hear as we kind of revisit some of the themes that came up this morning about AI in the context of business and economics and the economic frameworks that we're currently in. That was a pattern and a theme that came up quite a bit. Michael, you spoke to it in our most recent panel. Can you share your perspective on how we navigate these questions of AI and emerging technologies in this broader economic framework?
Thank you very much, Ron. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I've learned much more from you in this past year than vice versa. I think the two issues that you have highlighted need to be brought into relation with one another. First was measurement of human flourishing beyond GDP, beyond shareholder value. And the question is, well, why? Why would we want to do it? Aren't there untold numbers of measures of well-being, happiness, flourishing, life satisfaction already? What do we need another effort on? And so what is this about this particular approach to measurement that is different and particularly relevant to the future of AI and robotics? And I think these questions can be answered in two steps. The first step is to take a broad view and ask, why have Homo sapiens been so successful over the past 10,000s of years? And the answer to that question should lead us to some guidelines on measurement. And the answer is there are two special qualities that Homo sapiens have that have made us so successful. One is our ability to cooperate, as you said, at many flexible levels, which ants can't do, great apes can't do in different ways, honeybees can't do. So we can cooperate in the millions, we can cooperate in single digits. And the second is we're able to innovate. And so we can come up with new things, new ideas, and so on. And our faculty for cooperation can be captured in this concept of solidarity at different levels. And as I said in my first intervention, most of our challenges are collective challenges, and most of our achievements are the result of collective action. And so solidarity at that level really plays an important role. So instead of thinking of ourselves primarily as individuals, we should think ourselves as pieces of larger orders within orders. And we've got some choice of the orders within which we live. And that is the concept of solidarity, the sort of building of social clusters that deserves to be captured and is not adequately captured in any of the measurement systems. And now, why is that so relevant for the future of AI? Because if AI does anything, it connects people, and it connects them in new ways, and it uses previous knowledge to connect previous generations of people with current generation, give them new language structures, and thereby will play a critical role in the development of our solidarity in the future. And the other aspect, of course, is innovation. We're able to innovate. And AI will certainly do something fundamental to that. It will possibly either leverage our competence in innovation, or it will de-skill and disempower us. And it is within our imagination to find ways to shape the development of AI in order to build the flexible solidarities that we'll need, and to develop AI in a way that will enhance our sense of agency and thereby leverage the fruits of AI rather than being disempowered by it. Now, in order to provide sort of a broad, so this is S is for solidarity, A is for agency, material gain is G, gain, and E is environmental sustainability. Those are four fundamental things that we need in order to survive. And these are drivers of human flourishing, while the human flourishing study and the Global Flourishing Initiative focuses on pathways to human flourishing and outcomes of human flourishing. So to have the drivers in between becomes really important. But let me provide sort of a wider perspective, and which enables us to sort of find a common pathway through where I believe the future of AI should lie. The starting point must be a recognition that the world is out of balance. Given what it is that we do economically, we are destabilizing our natural systems, we are causing mass extinctions, we're depleting resources at an unsustainable rate, we're impairing biodiversity and reducing the resilience of our ecosystem. Climate change moves much faster than our efforts to control it. And unfortunately, at the same time, we're also diminishing our human capacities to deal with the problems that we're creating. Because economic inequality, insecurity, stagnating living standards, they've contributed to feelings of deep disempowerment and alienation. So societies are fragmenting, our polities are polarizing, and we're left thinking, why the hell is this happening? And one thing we can be sure of is it's not happening because human beings are predominantly ignorant or evil. Most people are really unhappy about all the environmental destruction and abject poverty that we are causing. But most of us find ourselves trapped in a system that induces us to behave in ways that turn out to be destructive. And so this system focuses primarily on economic success, the G of the SAGE. And the underlying assumption has always been what's good for the economy is good for society and the environment. And that assumption is plain wrong. We need to recognize that. Business is expected to focus on financial performance. Politicians are expected to serve the national interest. Consumers basically satisfy their wants at minimum cost. And the system allows the pursuit of these things even when it destroys the environment and undermines society. So economic prosperity has fundamentally become decoupled from social and environmental prosperity. And unless economic prosperity is recoupled with social and environmental prosperity, we will destroy the entire basis of our lives, and we will become progressively unable to do anything about it. So the recoupling transformation, recoupling economic prosperity with social and environmental prosperity, is one aspect that we have not covered in our discussion here. Basically, AI is being driven by business interests. And the leaders of business have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders and so on. There can be nice byproducts of that, but we cannot avoid the conclusion that this system is motivated by the G rather than the S and the A and the E and the A. So the recoupling transformation will first of all require, I believe, a new worldview, a new way of understanding how the world works and our role in it. And that will give rise to an impetus for reconfiguring this world so that economic prosperity can become realigned with social and environmental prosperity. So the last time a sort of a new worldview hit the stage big time and changed the way the world works was with the so-called European Enlightenment in the 17th and 18th centuries. And that view highlighted individual autonomy, reason, humanism, dispassionate objectivity, social contract, belief in human progress. Democracies were meant to serve the goals of autonomous citizens. Capitalist economies are meant to serve the preferences of autonomous consumers. The earth increasingly became viewed as a resource that can be exploited to satisfy human needs and wants. And driven by this worldview, the past 225 years has been a time of unprecedented material progress, increase in life expectancy, et cetera, all the way down the list, and spreading democratic governance. So the values of the Enlightenment, of course, remain important for human well-being, but we must also recognize, at this point, I believe, the footprint of the environment in the brokenness of our current world. So the emphasis on individual autonomy blinds us to the societal forces that drive political fragmentation and social manipulation. Viewing the world with dispassionate objectivity impoverishes our capacity for solidarity and belonging. And the drive to master the natural world blinds us to the need to participate humbly and responsibly in ecosystems that we really don't properly understand. So it's small wonder that economic prosperity has become decoupled from social and environmental prosperity. And as I said, we need a new worldview to correct where we have gone wrong, even though we've made a lot of material progress. So the simple way to connect this with SAGE and measurement and the future of AI is to start by understanding, as I said before, that we live in an order that is larger than our individual selves. And this order, it spans our physical neighborhood, our web of social connections, our place in the political landscape of power relations, a network of economic relations. That's an order. And this order itself, our order exists within larger orders, and we find we live in harmony. When we live in harmony with our order and its orders, then we find peace and contentment. So peace basically comes from sustainability. And fulfillment comes from spending one's life meaningfully. And meaning is not to be found in the exclusive pursuit of one's own happiness. Instead, meaning is found from bringing one's individual purposes in line with one's collective purposes. And to flourish, therefore, we must recognize our solidarity, these collective purposes with which we must align. Our true wealth is commonwealth. And we measure it not only in terms of how much we care for ourselves and our loved ones, but also for the poor and the underprivileged among us. True care is agency-based, helping others help themselves in order to help yet others in our webs of internet. And to flourish, we must exercise responsible aid. And we do this when we mobilize our greatest strength to serve our highest purposes, promoting harmonious orders for people and planet. So, aside from solidarity, obviously we need the G, material gain, material sufficiency at least. Enough material gain to satisfy our basic material needs. Whether we need the Gucci belts and Lamborghinis above that is another question. And we require environmental sustainability. Now, one thing that we must recognize is that although markets can promote economic efficiency under the right conditions, there exists no invisible hand whereby unfettered markets can deliver solidarity, agency, material sufficiency for all, and environmental sustainability. Markets cannot do that. I'm an economist that spent all my life trying to figure out ways in which they can. So here we've got 4 drivers of human flourish. As I said, solidarity, our sense of embeddedness in our social, political, economic, environmental orders. Agency, our capacity to address our challenges by shaping our surroundings and innovating. Material gain, the goods and services required for health, security, and comfort. And a self-sustaining environment. A natural world where all sentient creatures can flourish now and in the future. So these 4 drivers of flourishing, solidarity, agency, gain, and environment, SAGE, they provide what I would consider a sage approach to life. And putting these things into practice should be our job here. And let me just give a first indication, and then I will stop, of how that can be done in terms of 4 principles of collective action that follow from that, and just illustrate them as I go along with regards to climate change. The first principle is shared purpose, arising from solidarity at a scale that corresponds to the scale of the problem. So if the problem is climate change, then we need solidarity at that global level in order to address it. And shared purpose means shared climate goals across countries and cultures. Second principle is agency-based governance, whereby purposeful decisions of different stakeholders become consistent with one another in addressing collective problems. So I advise the G20 and the G7. There's a lot of top-down, and policymakers at that level think, okay, we'll solve this problem. And then I talk to big business executives, and they'll say, we get this. We can sort this out ourselves. And then I talked to the grassroots activists who said, curse on both those houses. We will do it ourselves. And the answer is, none of these groups can do it by themselves. They need to cooperate. And our concept of stakeholders prevents us from doing that, because business has its role and policymakers have their role, civil society have their role. And now we're required to cooperate across these roles. And once we do so, we will invent a new term like business and policymakers or government to provide a vocabulary for that type of collaboration. So agency-based climate policies involve international agreements among countries that follow distinctive but binding pathways to these common collective climate goals, giving all countries both the means and the say to achieve their collective ambition. There's a lot packed into there. But common climate goals, distinctive pathways to these goals. The third principle concerns the redirection of material gain. So business incentives and operating conditions need to be reformed with the aim of ensuring that profit cannot be earned at the expense of environmental sustainability or at the expense of society. The redirection can proceed in terms of tax and subsidy incentives, taxes on dirty antisocial operations, subsidies for clean pro-social ones, along with regulations and laws setting bounds on what's permitted, and consumer incentives can be redirected along similar lines. And then the fourth and final principle concerns the requisite pervasiveness of environmental responsibility. So all our economic activities in interaction with one another must become environmentally sustainable. So we should be rewarded always for contributing to the Earth's bounty and penalized from diminishing that. So these four principles, shared purpose, agency-based governance, redirected gain, environmental responsibility, again summarized by this acronym SAGE, could provide a new form of, guide us into a new enlightenment, one that prioritizes human flourishing in a thriving natural world. And it's very specific. And therefore, what this means in practice for the future of AI, for environmental policy, for macroeconomic policy, innovation policy, sustainable development, all these things interacting with one another, that should be important work in progress. And I would be delighted if this group and its continuation project could proceed along such lines.
Thank you, Dennis. And I think one of the things we've been talking about, both in the individual context of flourishing and the social and ecological, is this idea of, I'm not a musician, so please, if you're a musician, correct me on this. John, you can edit me on this one. But the idea of finding the keys, these notes that are easy to use in music to where you can make multiple songs. This is the graphic that we created, the framework, very complex. But for the individual and for at the social level and at the political level, what are those fewest most important things that we can focus on? And what Dennis is really proposing at that collective level, solidarity, agency, and environmental stewardship, in addition to gain, is something that we need to consider. So we're excited to collaborate with you on that in the going months as you get ready for the next round of G7 and G20 recommendations.